The 2 crumpled dollars looked so small in the boy's trembling hand, yet they carried the weight of a lifetime. 9-year-old Eli Turner stood alone in the doorway of the Maplewood Falls Sheriff's Office, his clothes torn, his cheeks hollow from hunger. At the far end of the room, Deputy Ryan McConnell looked up from his desk, his storm-gray eyes narrowing in surprise. Beside him, Duke, the 5-year-old sable and black German Shepherd K9, rose from his place on the floor, ears pricked, as if already sensing the storm of fear inside the child. "Please," Eli whispered, voice cracked like broken glass. "Take this money. Just arrest my uncle before he kills me." The room went still. Outside, snow fell against the frosted windows, muffling the world in silence. Ryan's gaze dropped to the bruises on Eli's thin arms, the hollow hopelessness in his eyes, and he knew this wasn't just a cry for help. It was a last chance at survival. What happened next would uncover stolen secrets, broken promises, and a bond between man, boy, and dog that would change all their lives forever. But first, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments below. Snow had fallen all night in Maplewood Falls, the little mountain town that sat like a pocket of light between pine-covered ridges. It was January, and the streets lay hushed beneath layers of white. The river that cut through the center of town smoked faintly, giving off mist that curled in the frozen air. Shop signs along Main Street were dim behind frosted glass, and even the familiar red-brick sheriff's office seemed half asleep under the weight of snow draped across its roof. Inside, Deputy Ryan McConnell warmed his hands around a chipped mug of coffee. At 36, Ryan carried himself with the calm steadiness of a man who had served time both in the military and on the streets as a lawman. He had storm-gray eyes that rarely revealed more than he intended, short, dark brown hair threaded with silver near the temples, and the build of someone who trained more for endurance than vanity. His Navy sheriff's jacket, padded for winter, carried the faint scuffs of long hours outdoors. Ryan had returned to his hometown 3 years earlier, after years of service in bigger cities, craving something quieter, something that might heal the fractures left behind by his own past. On the floor near his desk, Duke stretched out, his thick black and tan fur dusted with snowmelt. The 5-year-old German Shepherd had been Ryan's K9 partner since the police academy. Duke was intelligent, calm under pressure, and fiercely loyal, though his sharp amber eyes missed nothing. He had an uncanny instinct for danger, and Ryan trusted the dog more than most people. The morning had been quiet, yet Ryan's mind was restless. He had a case gnawing at him. Small thefts reported around Maplewood Falls Central Market. A baker swore loaves were vanishing at dawn. A grocer lost canned goods. A clothing stall complained of missing coats. Too petty for organized crime, too methodical for chance. Ryan suspected a child or teenager, maybe desperate, maybe hungry. But without proof, all he could do was wait for the next sign. The bell over the office door jingled softly, startling both man and dog. Duke's ears flicked forward. Ryan set his mug down and looked up. In the doorway stood a boy no taller than the desk, thin as winter branches. His hair was dark and uneven, as if cut with dull scissors. His coat was threadbare corduroy, several sizes too big, and his shoes, canvas sneakers gone gray, were damp from snow. His cheeks were hollow with hunger, and his eyes, wide and hesitant, carried the sort of exhaustion no child should bear. In his trembling hands he clutched 2 crumpled dollar bills. Ryan rose slowly, instinctively softening his posture so he wouldn't seem imposing. Duke stayed where he was, only his tail twitching, eyes locked on the boy with quiet interest. "Morning, son," Ryan said, voice low and steady. "Cold out there. Come on in, close the door." The boy stepped inside, shutting out the rush of icy wind. His breath clouded in the air, though the office's heater hummed. He held the bills out as though they were sacred, his knuckles white. "My name's Eli," he whispered. His voice cracked like dry wood. "Eli Turner. I have $2. Will you take it? Please, arrest my uncle. The words cut through the quiet like a blade. Ryan's brow furrowed. He stepped closer, crouching to meet the boy's eyes. Eli's face was pale, his lips split from the cold. Under the collar of his oversized coat, Ryan noticed faint bruises on his neck. "Tell me, Eli," Ryan said gently, "why do you want me to arrest your uncle?" Eli blinked hard, as if fighting tears. He glanced at the floor, then back up, urgency swimming in his eyes. "Because he hits me. All the time. He doesn't feed me either. I sleep in the shed behind the house. Sometimes he locks me out in the snow, and," his voice broke, "he says next time he'll do worse." "Please, mister. You're the sheriff, right?" "I'm a deputy," Ryan corrected softly, "but I can help you." Duke moved forward, sniffing the air, then pressed his warm head against Eli's small hand. The boy flinched, then let his fingers sink into the shepherd's thick coat. For the first time since stepping inside, Eli's expression eased, if only for a second. Ryan's stomach tightened. Abuse cases were never clean. He knew the name Harvey Turner. Middle-aged, worked odd jobs at the lumber yard, usually seen gambling at the tavern. There had been whispers about him, but nothing ever stuck. Ryan studied Eli, saw the desperation there, and knew this wasn't a false alarm. He stood, motioning Eli to a chair. "Sit down, kiddo. You're safe here. We'll figure this out." Eli clutched the 2 bills tighter. "Take it. It's all I have." Ryan placed a hand over the boy's, gently pushing the money back. "You keep that, Eli. Round here, help doesn't cost $2. The boy stared at him as though he'd never heard such a thing before. Ryan pulled a notepad closer. "Start from the beginning. Tell me everything you can. How long has your uncle been hurting you?" As Eli haltingly described nights locked outside, days without meals, fists slammed against walls and doors, Ryan felt his jaw clench. He scribbled notes, but his eyes never left the boy's face, making sure Eli knew he was being heard. Duke, sensing the weight of the moment, rested his chin on Eli's knee. When Eli's story trailed off, Ryan leaned back, exhaling slowly. He had enough to start an investigation, probable cause for a welfare check at the very least, but the boy's fragility gnawed at him. "Eli," he said softly, "where's your mom and dad?" The child's gaze darkened. "They died. Car accident. Long time ago. Uncle Harvey took me in after, said he was going to look after me." His voice dripped bitterness. Ryan nodded, though inside, anger rose. Guardianship twisted into abuse was nothing new, but it never stopped feeling like a betrayal of trust. The office phone rang suddenly, making Eli jump. Ryan answered, listened for a moment, then grunted. Another theft reported at the market canned food this time. He hung up, rubbing his forehead. 2 cases, both heavy, both pulling him in different directions. The thefts could wait. Eli could not. Ryan stood. "Here's what we're going to do. I'll take you to the clinic first, make sure you're checked over. After that, I'll pay your uncle a visit. You'll stay safe in the meantime." Eli's lip trembled. "You mean, you believe me?" "Every word," Ryan said firmly, and for the first time a spark of hope lit the boy's eyes. Ryan grabbed his coat and badge, clipped his radio to his belt, and motioned for Eli to follow. Duke trotted alongside, pressing close to the child. Outside, snowflakes spun in the wind, settling on their shoulders as they stepped into the stark brightness of Maplewood Fall's winter morning. Ryan glanced down at Eli, then at Duke, and felt the pieces shifting into place. This wasn't just another case. It was the beginning of something that would demand every ounce of his courage. What he didn't yet know was that Eli's plea and the secrets hidden behind Harvey Turner's doors would unravel far deeper truths than he ever imagined. The drive to Maplewood Falls General Hospital was a slow crawl through the snow-covered streets. Ryan's patrol truck rumbled steadily, heater blowing warm air that barely thawed the ice clinging to Eli's thin shoes. The boy sat stiffly in the passenger seat, the oversized corduroy coat bundled tight around his small frame. His hands still clenched the 2 crumpled dollars, even though Ryan had told him to keep them. Duke rested in the back, head leaning over the seat, golden eyes fixed on Eli as though silently keeping watch. The boy's breathing softened under that gaze, comforted by the dog's presence in a way words could not manage. The hospital itself was a squat, 3-story building made of pale brick, its windows glowing faintly yellow against the gray winter morning. Inside, warmth and the antiseptic tang of disinfectant washed over them. Nurses bustled between rooms, their rubber soles squeaking faintly on linoleum floors. Ryan guided Eli toward the admitting desk. The woman behind the counter, middle-aged with glasses perched low on her nose, wore pale blue scrubs and looked up in polite curiosity. "Deputy McConnell," she greeted. "What brings you in?" "Medical check," Ryan replied. He rested a hand lightly on Eli's shoulder. "This boy needs to be seen right away." The nurse's eyes softened as she took in Eli's pale face and hollow cheeks. She handed Ryan a clipboard of forms but motioned toward a seat. "We'll get him triaged." Soon after, a doctor appeared, a man in his late 40s named Dr. Samuel Reeves. He was tall, thin, with a salt-and-pepper beard trimmed neatly and tired eyes that still carried gentleness. His white coat was worn at the sleeves, his stethoscope hanging loosely around his neck. Born and raised in Maplewood Falls, Reeves had served the community for over 2 decades, known for his patience with children and his blunt honesty with adults. He crouched down to Eli's level, voice warm but direct. "Hey there, young man. I'm Dr. Reeves. We're just going to check you out, make sure you're all right." He didn't ask questions about what had brought the boy in, not yet. He simply held out his hand, waiting until Eli nodded before taking it. The exam was quiet except for Reeves's measured instructions. "Lift your shirt. Breathe in. Hold still." Ryan stood at the corner, his arms folded tightly, his jaw set as bruises surfaced under fluorescent light. Old, yellowed marks layered over fresh purple welts. The doctor gently probed along Eli's ribs, and the boy flinched. Reeves frowned. "He's got at least 1 cracked rib, maybe 2. Malnourished. I'll order x-rays to be certain. But this didn't happen yesterday. This is repeated trauma." Ryan's grip tightened around his belt. He met Reeves's eyes, and a silent understanding passed between them. When Eli was led for imaging, Ryan stepped into the hall, exhaling the frustration he could no longer contain. His hand moved to Duke's head, grounding himself in the steady weight of fur and loyalty. It was then that a new voice called from behind. "Ryan! You're not usually on this floor." He turned and saw Claire Dawson. She was 29, a nurse known around the hospital for her quick laugh and determined spirit. With chestnut hair pulled back into a neat ponytail and hazel eyes alert behind thin-rimmed glasses, she wore a set of lavender scrubs, a lanyard of pens dangling from her pocket. Claire wasn't from Maplewood Falls originally. She had grown up in Denver, but moved here 5 years ago seeking a smaller, safer place to raise a child. By her side, peeking shyly from behind her leg, was Maddie, a 6-year-old girl with curls the color of wheat and a polka-dot coat zipped up to her chin. Claire smiled, though it dimmed when she noticed Ryan's grim expression. "What's wrong? Who's the boy?" Ryan hesitated, aware of confidentiality, but trust in Claire had been earned over the years. "Name's Eli Turner, 9 years old. Came to me this morning. Bruises, cracked ribs, signs of neglect. Says his uncle's responsible." Claire's lips tightened. She looked down at Maddie, then back. God, he looks so small. No child should... She shook her head. "Does he have anyone else?" "Not that I know of," Ryan admitted. "Parents died in an accident. The uncle's his guardian." Claire knelt slightly so Maddie could hear. "Honey, why don't you go sit over there and draw for a bit?" The girl nodded, producing a small sketch pad and colored pencils from her backpack. As she wandered toward a chair, Claire's voice dropped. "If he needs a safe place, I can help. I'm a certified foster parent. I've been through the training. Maddie's proof I can handle it." Ryan studied her, weighing her words. Claire had always been steady, and Maddie was thriving under her care. "I'll keep that in mind. For now, we'll make sure he's safe medically. After that, I'll open an investigation into Harvey Turner." A short while later, Eli returned from x-rays, clutching the edges of the paper gown. Duke padded forward instantly, pressing against him. The boy's lips twitched into the faintest smile as he buried a hand in the shepherd's thick ruff. Dr. Reeves appeared with the results. 2 fractured ribs, some older healed ones, and significant malnutrition. He'll need rest, proper meals, and monitoring. I'll write a report. With your backing, Deputy, this qualifies as child endangerment. Ryan nodded. That's exactly what I needed to hear. He crouched beside Eli's bed, meeting his eyes. You're safe here, Eli. We'll make sure no one hurts you again. The boy whispered, You believe me? I wouldn't be here if I didn't, Ryan replied. Duke settled at the bedside, refusing to move as if declaring his loyalty without words. Claire reappeared, carrying a cup of warm broth. She handed it to Eli, her voice gentle. Drink slowly. It'll help. Maddie peeked out from behind her mother's scrubs and offered a timid wave. Eli blinked at her, then raised his hand in a shy response. The quiet moment sealed something unspoken. Eli, who had entered the sheriff's office trembling with 2 crumpled bills, now had people leaning toward him instead of away. For Ryan, the case file was no longer just paperwork, it was a vow. Harvey Turner would face the weight of the law, and Eli Turner would never again be left alone in the cold. The morning sky above Maplewood Falls was still bruised gray when Ryan parked his patrol truck in front of the sagging wooden house that belonged to Harvey Turner. The place stood at the edge of town, where pine trees leaned over snow-packed roads and roofs slanted with years of neglect. Smoke no longer rose from the chimney, and the porch sagged with rot. A pair of rusting tools leaned against the siding, and tire tracks in the snow suggested Harvey had returned home the night before. Ryan stepped out, adjusting the strap of his winter jacket and signaling to Duke, who leapt from the truck with practiced precision. 2 deputies joined him. Deputy Mark Hanley, a broad-shouldered man in his early 40s with thinning blonde hair and a permanent squint from years on patrol, carried himself with the caution of someone who had seen tempers flare into violence too many times. Next to him was Deputy Carla Ruiz, 35, of Mexican-American descent, with dark hair braided neatly and an old army parka that looked like it had seen 2 lifetimes of winters. Both were locals. Both had worked with Ryan long enough to know his instincts rarely failed. House looks like it hasn't seen a decent meal in months, Carla muttered, brushing frost from her sleeves. Ryan nodded. We're going to do this by the book. Welfare check, probable cause based on medical reports. If Harvey's inside, we stay calm but firm. They stepped onto the porch, boots creaking against old wood, and Ryan knocked sharply. No answer. Another knock, louder. After a pause, the door opened, revealing Harvey Turner himself. Mid-50s, wiry frame, wrapped in a plaid flannel shirt stained with grease, eyes bloodshot from alcohol. His jaw was peppered with stubble, and his posture already radiated hostility. "What the hell do you want?" Harvey growled, gripping the edge of the door. "Deputy McConnell," Ryan said evenly, showing his badge. "We need to take a look inside. Welfare check for Eli Turner." "There's no kid here," Harvey snapped. "You got the wrong house." Carla's voice cut through. "Medical records say otherwise." "Step aside, sir." Harvey hesitated, then let out a sharp laugh. "Fine. Waste your time." He stepped back, though his glare never left Ryan. The deputies entered. The smell of stale beer and mildew clung to the air. The kitchen greeted them with empty cupboards, a broken fridge humming pointlessly, and a trash bin overflowing with bottles. Ryan scanned the shelves, noting dust where food should have been. Carla crouched, pointing to a corner where mouse droppings lay scattered. No groceries for weeks. Ryan's jaw tightened. He motioned to Duke. "Search." The shepherd moved like a shadow, sniffing along walls, nose pressed to floorboards. He paused near the living room, tail stiffening, then began to paw at a patch of carpet near the baseboard. Ryan and Mark pulled it back, revealing a loose wooden plank. Beneath it lay a small metal safe, scratched but intact. "Looks like Duke's found something," Ryan muttered. Harvey stiffened. "That's mine." "You've got no right." Ryan cut him off, voice sharp. "Probable cause. Step back." Mark hauled the safe onto the rug. The lock was basic, and Carla quickly pried it open with practiced force. Inside were folded documents, envelopes stuffed with receipts, and a stack of legal papers. Ryan pulled one free. His eyes scanned the page bank statements, inheritance papers, life insurance payouts in the name of Eli Turner, all signed under Harvey's custodianship. Ryan's storm-gray eyes narrowed. "You've been holding on to this money." Harvey's sneer twisted. "It's mine by rights." I took the boy in when no one else would. "You think feeding a brat comes free?" His words slurred with both anger and arrogance. Ryan held the papers high. "This isn't guardianship. This is theft, and the boy you were supposed to protect is sitting in a hospital bed with fractured ribs." For a moment, Harvey's mask slipped, fear flashing before he forced a scoff. "He lies." "Kids lie all the time." Duke let out a low growl, hackles rising. Ryan stepped closer, his voice steady as stone. "Not this time." Ryan gathered the evidence, sealing it into a folder. "We'll be back with warrants." "Don't leave town, Harvey." The older man spat onto the floor. "Go to hell." Ryan ignored him, leading the deputies and Duke back outside. The cold air felt cleaner after the stench of that house, but his mind churned with anger. Eli's story wasn't just true, it was worse than the boy had known. Later that afternoon, Ryan drove through the heart of Maplewood Falls. The market buzzed with the life the Turner house lacked, vendors shouting prices, townsfolk wrapped in heavy coats, children trailing behind parents. Ryan stopped at a bakery stand to grab a coffee when a sudden commotion drew his attention. A boy darted from the bread stall, clutching a loaf, his thin legs pumping through the snow. The vendor shouted, "Thief!" "Stop that kid!" Ryan reacted instantly, Duke leaping forward with him. Within seconds, the boy stumbled on the icy path and Ryan caught him gently by the arm. The boy was about 13, scrappy and wiry, with tangled brown hair sticking from under a knit cap. His jacket was ripped at the seams, shoes too small, laces dragging. His face bore the hard defiance of someone forced to survive too young. "What's your name?" Ryan asked, steady but not unkind. The boy glared. Kyle Henderson." His voice cracked with both youth and defiance. "Let me go." "Why were you stealing bread, Kyle?" The boy clutched the loaf to his chest. "Because my little sister's hungry." "We haven't eaten since yesterday." His words fell out in a rush, as if ashamed. Ryan studied him. The anger faded, replaced by the familiar ache he'd felt looking at Eli. "How old is she?" 10, Kyle muttered. "She's at home." "She's waiting." Ryan loosened his grip, but didn't release him entirely. "You can't keep stealing. But I'm not going to throw you in a cell either. Take this as a warning. Next time, there'll be consequences. Understand?" Kyle's eyes flickered with confusion, then relief. He nodded, clutching the bread tighter. Ryan reached into his coat and pulled out a card. "If things get worse, come to me." Or the sheriff's office. "Don't handle it alone." The boy took the card hesitantly, stuffing it into his pocket before running off into the crowd. Duke watched him disappear, tail swishing once as though recognizing another stray caught between hunger and survival. Ryan stood there a moment longer, snowflakes drifting into his hair, the safe's documents heavy in his bag. 2 children, 2 different houses, but the same thread of neglect and desperation wove through their stories. He knew, with grim certainty, that Maplewood Falls was hiding more secrets than anyone wanted to admit. And now, it was his job to bring them into the light. Snow still clung stubbornly to the streets of Maplewood Falls the morning Ryan spread the papers from Harvey's safe across his desk. The sheriff's office was quiet. The only sounds the ticking wall clock and Duke's steady breathing from where he lay curled at the foot of Ryan's chair. Thin shafts of winter sunlight filtered through blinds, striping the documents with alternating bars of shadow and light. Ryan's storm-gray eyes moved across signatures, numbers, and official seals. There was no mistaking it. The inheritance was real. After the fatal accident that had taken Eli's parents, the estate settlement had left the boy with a considerable fund money meant for his education, his care, his future. And Harvey had been the legal guardian, entrusted with it. Instead, the bank withdrawals and gambling slips told a different story. Months of squandered cash at taverns, betting halls, and shady poker tables. Ryan pressed a hand to his temple, fury simmering. The papers weren't just proof of neglect. They were evidence of outright theft. He gathered them into a folder, preparing to submit them to the district attorney. But he knew cases like this moved slowly. Harvey wouldn't sit in a cell just because of suspicion. They needed airtight evidence statements, records, corroboration. Ryan exhaled, knowing the fight had only begun. Later that day, the market bustled under a brittle sky. Snowmelt dripped from awnings and people stomped slush from their boots as they bartered for bread, meat, and firewood. Ryan walked the street, Duke close by his side, both figures drawing nods of recognition from townsfolk. He wasn't expecting to see Kyle again so soon, but the boy was waiting near the alley between the butcher's and the hardware store. His cap was pulled low, hands jammed into pockets, and he shifted nervously from foot to foot. When Ryan approached, Kyle blurted, "I didn't steal nothing today." "I swear." Ryan studied him, noticing how thin his coat really was, how the elbows were patched with tape. "Relax, Kyle. I didn't come to arrest you." The boy's chin lifted defiantly, though his eyes betrayed exhaustion. "Then why you here?" "Because I wanted to know why a 13-year-old is out stealing food." "You said you had a sister. Where is she?" Kyle hesitated, chewing his lip before finally sighing. "She's home." "Our place ain't much, just an old trailer near the ridge. Her name's Sophie Henderson. She's 10. I've been looking out for her since she left." Ryan's expression softened. "Left?" Kyle nodded, fists clenching. "She split last year. Said she couldn't handle it anymore. Dad's gone, don't even know where, so it's just us. I try to keep Sophie in school, but some days—" He trailed off. Ryan pictured the girl, small, hungry, waiting for her brother to come home with whatever he could scrape together. He knew neglect when he heard it, and Kyle's voice carried no lies, only desperation. "You need help," Ryan said firmly. "Stealing bread isn't going to keep your sister safe." Kyle's jaw worked stubbornly. "What else am I supposed to do?" "Nobody cares. If the state finds out, they'll split us up. They'll take Sophie away." Ryan crouched slightly so his voice matched the boy's level. "I'm not the state, Kyle." "I'm here in Maplewood Falls, and I've seen what happens when kids get left behind. I don't want that for you or Sophie." Kyle looked away, blinking rapidly, as though the admission stung more than the cold wind. Ryan reached into his coat, pulling out a granola bar from his pocket. He pressed it into Kyle's hand. "Start here. Feed yourself before you collapse. And tomorrow, bring Sophie to the community center. They run free meals for kids. You don't have to do this alone." Kyle hesitated, then muttered, "Why do you care?" "I'm just another thief to you." Ryan's voice hardened. "Because I see the same look in your eyes that I saw in Eli Turner's, and I won't stand by and watch another kid get swallowed by someone else's mistakes." The name caught Kyle's attention. "Eli Turner? That's the boy who came into town this morning, ain't it? People been talking." Ryan nodded. "He asked me to arrest his uncle, and now I've got the evidence that his uncle stole everything his parents left him. Eli deserves justice, and so do you and Sophie." Kyle shifted uncomfortably but didn't run. His fingers tightened around the granola bar, knuckles pale. For the first time, Ryan saw the wall of defiance crack. "Maybe I'll think about the community center," Kyle muttered. Then he stuffed the bar into his pocket, turned, and disappeared into the crowd. Ryan watched him go, Duke at his side. The shepherd tilted his head as though sensing Ryan's troubled thoughts. 2 boys, 2 lives scarred by abandonment. And somehow their stories were weaving into his. Back at the sheriff's office, Ryan filed the documents into evidence. He typed up a report outlining Harvey's misuse of Eli's inheritance and attached Dr. Reeves's medical statement about the boy's injuries. The paper trail was growing strong, but Ryan knew Harvey would fight tooth and nail, hiding behind legal guardianship until the very end. As evening fell, Ryan sat back, weary but resolute. Outside, the street lamps glowed against snowflakes swirling in the dark. Inside, Duke lifted his head from his paws and let out a quiet huff, almost as if reminding Ryan why this mattered. He glanced at the folder marked Turner, Eli, and then at the card he had given Kyle, imagining whether the boy would ever use it. Two children, worlds apart yet bound by the same truth. Adults had failed them, and now it fell on him to do what the law and maybe compassion demanded. The battle over Eli's inheritance had just begun, but Ryan was determined it would end with justice, not silence. The storm that rolled into Maplewood Falls overnight left the town buried under another 6 inches of snow. By morning, the streets had been cleared into narrow lanes, and the sheriff's office buzzed with talk of blocked roads and icy accidents. Ryan, however, was focused on something far darker. The folder marked Turner, Eli, now held more than medical reports and inheritance documents. It contained threads that pointed straight to Harvey's desperation. Ryan sat at his desk studying receipts he had gathered, each stamped with the name of a bar on the outskirts of town, each with numbers that didn't lie. Harvey wasn't just neglectful, he was drowning in gambling debts. Ryan had seen men in that cycle before. They sold whatever they could, pawned heirlooms borrowed from anyone reckless enough to lend, and when nothing remained, they turned violent. Deputy Carla Ruiz knocked on his door, a wool scarf still looped around her neck from patrol. "Got word from an informant," she said. "There's a basement game running out of the Pine Hollow Tavern. Harvey's been seen there almost every night." Ryan closed the folder, his jaw set. "That tracks. If he's in that deep, he's going to look for fast money, and the only asset left in his hands is Eli's parents' house." Carla leaned against the doorframe, expression grim. "If he sells it, Eli loses the last piece of his family. We both know those gamblers won't give a dime back." Ryan stood, pulling on his winter coat. "Then we stop it before the papers change hands." Later that afternoon, Ryan drove past the tavern. The Pine Hollow sat half hidden under the pines, its roof sagging with snow, neon beer signs flickering faintly in the windows. Inside, laughter and curses spilled into the cold air whenever the door opened. Ryan parked at a distance, watching men in heavy coats slip inside, shoulders hunched against the wind. He noted each face, each license plate, quietly building a picture of the operation. Harvey's beat-up sedan was parked crooked near the back, exhaust puffing weakly. Ryan didn't move in that night. He needed a warrant, something concrete. But the image of Harvey inside, risking away stolen money, fueled his determination. Back in town, the hospital wing felt like another world. Warmth, clean air, and the faint chatter of nurses contrasted sharply with the tavern's shadows. Claire Dawson had stopped by after her shift carrying a small bag of board games under her arm. "Thought Eli might like something to take his mind off things," she said, setting the bag on the table. She wore a thick gray cardigan over her scrubs, her hair pulled into a loose bun. Maddie clutched her hand, her polka-dot coat still buttoned up. Eli looked up from his bed where Duke lay stretched at his feet like a sentry. His eyes, once wary, flickered with something close to curiosity. "Hi," Maddie said shyly, producing a set of colored markers from her pocket. "Want to draw?" Eli hesitated, then nodded. Soon, the two children sat cross-legged on the bed, bent over paper. Maddie chattered softly, pointing out colors while Eli's thin fingers traced shaky lines that slowly steadied. For the first time, laughter soft and uncertain escaped him. Ryan stood nearby, arms folded, watching the scene unfold. He met Claire's eyes and she smiled. "He'll heal faster with a little bit of normal," she said. Ryan nodded. "Maybe. He deserves it." Meanwhile, across town, Kyle Henderson was moving silently through alleys dusted with snow. The 13-year-old had taken Ryan's warning seriously. He hadn't stolen again. But survival still weighed on him, and his protective instinct for Sophie never waned. That evening, while searching for scraps behind the diner, he noticed Harvey Turner emerging from a side door of the tavern. Harvey's gait was unsteady, his flannel shirt hanging open despite the cold. But Harvey wasn't alone. 2 men followed him out into the lot. One was tall, gaunt, with sunken cheeks and a black peacoat buttoned to his chin. His name, Kyle would later overhear, was Earl Jennings, a 50-year-old loan shark known in hushed tones across town. Earl had once run a pawn shop, but turned to high-interest lending when the market failed. His sharp eyes and permanent sneer marked him as a man who thrived on fear. The second man was younger, late 20s, with a bulky frame hidden under a leather jacket. A scar ran along his left cheek, puckered and pale. He was introduced simply as Mason, Earl's enforcer, the kind of man who used fists before words. From his hiding place behind a dumpster, Kyle listened as Harvey's voice rose in slurred desperation. "Just give me more time. The house is mine to sell. I'll get you your money." Earl's reply was low and dangerous. "You've had time. That house better be in my name by the end of the month, or you'll regret it." Mason cracked his knuckles, the sound echoing in the frozen air. Harvey flinched. Kyle's heart pounded. He knew he was seeing something important, something that tied Harvey's greed to the threats Ryan had warned him about. He stayed hidden until the men drove away, then bolted into the night, bread forgotten. The next day, Ryan returned to the hospital. Eli was stronger, his cheeks a little less hollow thanks to steady meals. Maddie had left behind a drawing two stick figures holding hands with a German shepherd at their side. In childish scrawl beneath it read, "Family." Ryan crouched beside Eli's bed. "We're making progress. I found out Harvey's been gambling heavy and now he's trying to sell your parents' house, but I won't let him. Not without a fight." Eli clutched the drawing, his eyes wide. "It was supposed to be my home." Ryan placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "It still can be." As Ryan left the room, Duke padding loyally at his side, he couldn't shake the gnawing sense that Harvey's debts were pulling darker forces into Maplewood Falls. Forces that didn't care about justice or children-only money. But at least Eli, for the first time in years, was surrounded by people who cared. The snow in Maplewood Falls did not stop falling that week, blanketing streets and rooftops in layers so thick they muffled even the usual town noise. Ryan's cabin sat on the northern edge of town, a modest log structure with smoke curling from its chimney and a wide porch facing the woods. It was meant to be a quiet refuge after long shifts, but that night the silence outside pressed too heavily, the kind of silence that carried danger. Inside, Eli sat curled on the couch under a wool blanket, flipping through one of Maddie's children's books she had lent him. Duke lay stretched across the floor, but his ears were sharp, his head lifting every few minutes as if catching something beyond human senses. Ryan had just finished writing a supplemental report on Harvey's gambling debts when Duke suddenly rose, body taut, growl rumbling deep in his chest. Ryan froze, instinct honed by years of service. He set his pen down quietly and moved to the window. Beyond the snow-dusted glass, faint figures shifted near the tree line. 3 men, bundled in dark coats, their outlines half hidden by the drifting flakes. One held something metallic that glinted under the porch light, maybe a bat, maybe worse. Ryan whispered, "Eli, stay here." "Don't move." The boy nodded, clutching the blanket tighter. He unholstered his sidearm but kept it low, stepping onto the porch with Duke at his side. "Evening," Ryan called out, his voice steady. "Care to tell me why you're on my property?" The men hesitated. One stepped forward, a burly figure in his late 30s, shaved head under a knit cap, his leather jacket stretched across a thick chest. His name, Ryan would later learn, was Calvin Rourke, an ex-bouncer turned petty enforcer for loan sharks around the county. Calvin's voice was rough, carrying a sneer. "Message from a friend. Stay out of Harvey Turner's business." Ryan didn't flinch. "That sounds like a threat." The second man, slimmer, maybe mid-20s with a patchy beard and jittery movements, muttered, "We're just here to warn, that's all." He reeked of cheap liquor even at this distance. The third lingered behind them, silent, his hood drawn low. Duke snarled, teeth flashing white against the snow. Calvin shifted uncomfortably, and Ryan raised his weapon just enough for the gesture to be clear. "This is your only warning. Leave my land. Next time, we'll do this downtown in front of a judge." The 3 exchanged glances. the bravado draining quickly. Calvin spat into the snow and backed off. Within moments, they melted into the trees, footsteps crunching until only silence returned. Ryan exhaled, lowering his weapon, but not his guard. Duke remained at attention until the night swallowed every trace of the intruders. When Ryan stepped back inside, Eli's eyes were wide, fear painted across his face. "Are they coming back?" the boy whispered. "Not tonight," Ryan said firmly, kneeling so Eli could see his calm expression. "Duke and I won't let anything happen to you." The shepherd padded over, resting his head against Eli's knee, and the boy buried his fingers into his fur, comforted. The threat, however, lingered in Ryan's mind. Harvey's debts had drawn dangerous men into this, and now they were circling closer. The next day brought another challenge. On his patrol rounds through the south end of Maplewood Falls, Ryan caught sight of Kyle Henderson standing outside the abandoned rail yard, shoulders hunched against the cold. He wasn't alone. 2 older teens loitered with him, one lighting a cigarette, the other exchanging a small packet for cash. Ryan's stomach tightened. Drug runners. He recognized the older boy Marcus Dean, 17, lanky with sharp cheekbones and a reputation for pushing meth in town. Marcus wore a black hoodie under a bomber jacket, his eyes darting constantly as if expecting trouble. The other, a broad-shouldered kid named Troy Wilkins, had just turned 18 and already had an assault charge. Ryan pulled the patrol truck over, stepping out with Duke leaping after him. His voice cut through the air. "Kyle!" "Step away from them." The older teens cursed under their breath. Marcus sneered, flicking ash onto the snow. "Easy, deputy." "Just talking to the kid. No harm done." Kyle looked torn, his face pale, fingers twitching like he didn't know where to put them. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Talking isn't what I saw. Get lost, Marcus. You too, Troy. Before I find cause to bring you in." They grumbled, but Duke's low growl was enough to push them back. Within minutes, they had disappeared down the tracks, leaving Kyle standing awkwardly in the cold. Ryan approached, his tone firm, but not unkind. "What were you thinking, Kyle?" Kyle's shoulders sagged. "I wasn't going to buy." "They said I could make money running errands. Just a little work, that's all, I thought. I thought it could help Sophie." Ryan's frustration simmered, but beneath it was recognition. "That's not work, Kyle. That's chains. You'd end up in jail or worse, leaving your sister alone." Kyle kicked at the snow, blinking hard. "I don't know what else to do. Nobody's lining up to help us." Ryan reached into his coat pocket and handed the boy a folded flyer. It was from the town's community center, advertising hot meals and tutoring programs. "There are better ways. You and Sophie can come here. No deals with punks like Marcus." Kyle stared at the flyer as if it were written in another language. "You really think they'll help us?" "I know they will," Ryan said, "but you've got to make the choice. If you want to prove you're more than a thief, this is your shot." Kyle didn't answer right away. He shoved the paper into his pocket and mumbled, "I'll think about it." As Ryan drove away, Duke resting his head against the window, he knew the boy stood at a crossroads. Whether Kyle chose right or wrong, Ryan couldn't control, but he could keep showing up, keep pulling him back from the edge whenever he faltered. That evening, as snow fell softly again, Ryan sat on his porch with Duke at his feet, watching the forest shadows stretch longer than they should. The warning from Harvey's hired thugs replayed in his head. The danger was close now. Too close. Inside, Eli's laughter drifted faintly from the living room as Maddie's drawing still hung on the wall. The sound reminded Ryan of why he couldn't back down. Harvey might have debts and criminals might be circling, but this boy would not be left defenseless again. The snow had stopped falling by the time Ryan returned to Harvey Turner's property with a search warrant. The deputies followed close behind, their boots crunching over the icy ground. Duke moved ahead of them, nose low, tail stiff, guiding like a compass. The house stood quiet and crooked against the pale sky, its roof sagging under the weight of unshoveled snow. Harvey wasn't home. He had stormed out earlier, cursing and slamming doors when served with the warrant. That suited Ryan fine. Inside, the place was colder than the air outside, as if the house itself had been abandoned long before Harvey ever left. The smell of stale smoke and mold clung to the walls. Ryan motioned to Mark Hanley to check the back rooms while Carla Ruiz documented the kitchen, empty cabinets still glaring like open mouths. Duke padded straight down the narrow hallway and stopped at a closed bedroom door. Ryan opened it cautiously. The room was small, walls stained with water damage, a mattress lying crooked on the floor. But Duke's focus was sharp, his nose working rapidly near the base of a dresser. He pawed twice, claws scratching wood, then growled softly. Ryan crouched and pulled the drawer free. Behind a stack of filthy shirts, tucked into the corner, was a battered cell phone, screen cracked, casing chipped. Ryan slipped on a glove and picked it up. The device was old, the kind prepaid phones sold for cash at gas stations. "Good boy," Ryan murmured, giving Duke a brief scratch behind the ears. Back at the station, the phone was charged and unlocked. What appeared inside chilled Ryan more than he'd expected. Video files, dozens of them, dated across months. He clicked the first, and the grainy image filled the screen. Harvey's voice barking, Eli flinching under the blow of a hand, the camera catching every second. More clips followed, shoving, screaming. Nights when Eli was locked outside in the cold while Harvey drank. Each file was damning, undeniable. Ryan leaned back, his jaw clenched. This wasn't just a welfare case anymore. It was abuse. Systematic and deliberate, recorded almost carelessly. Harvey had left the evidence in his own house, and now it was in Ryan's hands. The next afternoon, Ryan found Kyle lingering near the community center steps, shoulders hunched in his patched jacket. Sophie sat beside him, a small girl with straight brown hair tucked under a knitted cap, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of hot chocolate provided by the staff. She looked even younger than 10, her cheeks pale but her eyes curious. Ryan approached slowly. "Kyle." "Sophie." Kyle shifted uncomfortably. "We're not here for trouble." "Just getting a meal. That's what the center's for," Ryan said evenly. "Nobody's accusing you of anything." He crouched to Sophie's level. "How's the hot chocolate?" Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "It's warm." Ryan stood again, turning back to Kyle. "I need to ask you something. It's about Harvey Turner." Kyle's face tightened. "What about him? You've seen him around the market. Heard things." Kyle hesitated, glancing at Sophie, then back at Ryan. His voice dropped low. "He sells stuff." "Not his own either. I've seen him hand over boxes of food, sometimes electronics, to guys that hang near the alley behind the butcher. They give him cash, quick, like they don't want to be seen. Some of that stuff looked stolen. From stores, from trucks maybe." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "And you're sure it was Harvey?" Kyle nodded firmly. "I swear. He laughed once, said gamblers pay better than grocers, said he knew how to turn trash into cash. I figured it wasn't right, but I kept my mouth shut. Didn't think anyone would listen." Ryan exhaled, piecing it together. Harvey wasn't just blowing inheritance money in card games. He was tied to theft rings, laundering goods for fast cash. That meant more leverage for prosecution and more danger for anyone standing in his way. "Thank you, Kyle," Ryan said. "This matters." "More than you know." Kyle looked down at Sophie, who clutched his hand tightly. "So, what happens now?" Ryan studied them both, the boy trying so hard to be a protector, the girl leaning on him for survival. "Now," Ryan said, "it's about making sure Harvey answers for all of it, and about keeping you two far away from men like him." Kyle gave a short nod. It wasn't quite trust, but it wasn't defiance either. That night, Ryan sat alone in his office, the phone resting on the desk like a silent witness. The videos, Kyle's testimony, the financial papers, all of it painted a picture darker than even he had guessed. Duke lay at his feet, ears flicking every so often, as if restless. Ryan looked at the evidence again, the faces of children who had been failed, and vowed that Harvey Turner's shadow would not stretch over Maplewood Falls much longer. The courthouse in Maplewood Falls stood like an austere guardian at the edge of Main Street. a brick building from the early 1900s with tall windows that caught the pale winter sun. On the morning of Harvey Turner's trial, its steps were lined with fresh snow, shoveled into neat banks by custodians who seemed determined to keep at least one place in town clear of the storm. Inside, the air hummed with anticipation. Journalists, townsfolk, and officials all aware that the case had shaken the small community to its core. Ryan walked in with Eli at his side, the boy's frame swallowed by a borrowed navy coat. Duke trotted between them, a calm anchor amid the stares. Eli's lips were pressed tight, his hands twisting together nervously. Ryan leaned down. "You don't have to say anything today, Eli. You just sit with me. You're safe." In the front of the courtroom, the prosecutor, Janet Rowe, prepared her files. She was in her early 40s, tall and composed, her chestnut hair tied back, wearing a charcoal skirt suit. Janet had built her career on child welfare cases, earning a reputation for precision and unshakable resolve. Today, her voice would carry the weight of Eli's pain. Across the aisle sat Harvey Turner, hands cuffed, his face unshaven and gray with fatigue. He wore a wrinkled button-down shirt under a brown jacket, the attempt at formality only making his bitterness more apparent. At his side was Martin Keegan, a defense attorney in his 50s, stocky, with thinning hair and spectacles that glinted under the lights. Keegan was known for taking clients no one else wanted, his arguments sharp but often tinged with cynicism. The judge, Eleanor Briggs, entered promptly at 9. 60 years old, with short silver hair and a robe that hung like armor, she was respected in the county for her no-nonsense rulings and sharp tongue. "Court is now in session," she declared, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Janet began, her tone measured. "Your Honor, the state of Colorado charges Harvey Turner with the following: misappropriation of estate funds, fraud, child abuse, and criminal neglect. The evidence will show a pattern of deliberate cruelty toward his nephew, Eli Turner." The first pieces of evidence were the financial documents. Ryan had organized them into a clear timeline: insurance payouts, inheritance accounts, and withdrawals leading directly to Harvey's gambling debts. Janet explained each exhibit, her voice calm but unyielding. Then came the moment everyone waited for. Ryan stepped forward with the battered phone Duke had uncovered. The videos played on a projector screen, grainy but unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the room as Harvey's voice barked curses, and Eli's small frame cowered under blows. One clip showed him locked outside in the snow, shivering, while Harvey's laughter echoed. Eli flinched at the images, his small hands covering his ears. Ryan leaned down, whispering, "It's all right. Everyone sees the truth now." Harvey's attorney tried to object, claiming the videos could have been fabricated, but Judge Briggs cut him short. "The chain of custody is clear." "Sit down, Mr. Keegan." The prosecution rested their case on the evidence, but then came a surprise. Janet called Kyle Henderson to the stand. The courtroom stirred as the boy, only 13, walked forward in a worn flannel shirt and patched jeans. His hair stuck out from under a borrowed cap, but his chin was raised in stubborn defiance. Ryan stood close by, reassuring with a nod. Kyle sat in the witness chair, glancing once toward Sophie in the gallery, who watched with wide, anxious eyes. Janet softened her tone. "Kyle, can you tell the court what you've seen involving the defendant, Harvey Turner?" Kyle swallowed hard but spoke clearly. "I saw him sell stuff. Boxes of food, electronics, things that weren't his. He gave them to guys at the market, guys who steal. He took cash, quick, like he knew it was dirty. He said gamblers pay better than grocers." Janet asked, "Were these transactions frequent?" Kyle nodded. "More than once. I seen it with my own eyes." The defense attorney rose, his voice mocking. "You're a thief yourself, aren't you, Kyle? Weren't you caught stealing bread just weeks ago? Why should we believe anything you say?" Kyle's face flushed, but before he could answer, Ryan stood, his voice firm. "Objection. The witness's past has no bearing on the defendant's actions. He's here to testify to what he saw, not to be shamed for trying to survive." Judge Briggs banged her gavel. "Sustained." "Move on, Mr. Keegan." Kyle met Ryan's eyes, and with that silent support his shoulders squared. "I stole because I was hungry. Harvey sold because he was greedy. That's the difference." The words landed heavy. Even some in the gallery murmured agreement. By late afternoon, the evidence had piled higher than the snow outside. Financial theft, fraud, video proof of abuse, witness testimony linking Harvey to criminal networks. The defense sputtered with excuses, but the picture was clear. Judge Briggs's closing words rang like iron. "The court finds sufficient evidence to proceed with full charges. Bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody pending sentencing." Harvey erupted, shouting curses, but was dragged out in cuffs. His voice faded as the doors slammed behind him. Eli leaned against Ryan, trembling but relieved. Kyle returned to Sophie, who threw her arms around him, her small figure pressed against his side. For the first time, Ryan saw pride flicker across the boy's tired face. The courtroom emptied slowly, but Ryan stayed back, standing in the quiet as Duke pressed against his leg. The fight wasn't over. Sentencing would come later, but the tide had turned. Eli's truth had been spoken, and Kyle had proven he was more than the mistakes he'd made. For both boys, this day marked a chance to step out of the shadows Harvey had cast. The first clear morning in weeks broke over Maplewood Falls with pale sunlight spilling across the snowy hills. The courthouse bell rang out, announcing what would be remembered as the end of Harvey Turner's long shadow. Inside, the atmosphere was tense but steady. People had gathered, not for spectacle, but to see whether justice would finally hold weight in their small mountain town. Judge Eleanor Briggs presided once again, her silver hair catching the light. Harvey Turner sat slouched in his seat, his wrists chained, his eyes hollow. The weeks of proceedings had stripped him of his bluster. He wore an ill-fitting, county-issued shirt, and though his lawyer, Martin Keegan, tried to whisper last-minute reassurances, Harvey only scowled. The prosecutor, Janet Rowe, stood firm, presenting the sum of the case. She recapped the inheritance documents, the gambling debts, the videos from the phone, and Kyle's testimony linking Harvey to the market thefts. Her voice never wavered, cutting through the courtroom like a knife. When Judge Briggs delivered the sentence, the words echoed against the wooden panels of the chamber. 15 years in state prison for fraud, theft, and child abuse. Custodial rights over Eli Turner are hereby terminated. Eli sat beside Ryan in the gallery, his small hands gripping the deputy's sleeve. His wide eyes blinked as though the words were almost too big to understand. Harvey cursed under his breath, but the gavel came down, final and sharp. The deputies led him away, his boots scraping against the tile. The courthouse emptied slowly. Eli stood outside, the cold air painting his cheeks pink. Ryan knelt so they were eye to eye. "It's done, Eli." "He can't hurt you anymore," the boy whispered. "What happens to me now?" Ryan hesitated only a second before answering. "I've already filed the papers." "I want to be your guardian, Eli. Not just for now, for good." The boy's mouth parted in surprise. "You mean, live with you?" Ryan nodded. "Live with me. With Duke. With a family that won't let you down." For a moment Eli said nothing, his breath hanging like smoke in the air. Then he lunged forward, wrapping his thin arms around Ryan's neck. Duke barked once, almost joyfully, tail thumping against the snow. In the weeks that followed, paperwork moved quickly, thanks in no small part to Claire Dawson. She guided Ryan through the foster-to-adoption process, her sharp organizational skills making the mountain of forms less daunting. She appeared at every meeting, steady and encouraging, her daughter Maddie always close by with drawings for Eli. The day the court approved the adoption, Eli held the certificate like it was a treasure map. He whispered, "I finally belong somewhere," and Ryan felt the words settle into his heart like a vow. Meanwhile, Kyle Henderson's life began to change as well. Social services placed him and Sophie into the town's youth support program. Unlike the impersonal systems Kyle had feared, this one was overseen by local families and volunteers. Claire, ever the nurturer, offered to keep a close eye on them. Maddie welcomed Sophie instantly, dragging her into games of make-believe, their laughter echoing through Claire's modest house. For Kyle, school became a new challenge. At 13, he had missed months of regular classes, always choosing to provide for Sophie instead. Now, with teachers willing to work with him, he struggled but pushed forward. His jeans were patched, his notebooks worn, but he walked into the classroom with a determination that came from knowing Sophie no longer depended on his thefts to eat. One teacher, Mr. Leonard Foster, a man in his late 50s with graying hair and spectacles perched low on his nose, noticed Kyle's efforts. He often stayed after class, offering quiet encouragement. "You've got more grit than half the kids here," he told Kyle once. "Don't waste it, use it." Ryan checked in on Kyle often, sometimes stopping by after patrol to find him bent over homework at the community center. The boy still carried shadows in his eyes, but they were lighter now, softened by the weight he no longer bore alone. Back at Ryan's cabin, life shifted too. Eli moved into a small bedroom with fresh sheets and a window that faced the woods. He decorated the walls with Maddie's drawings and one of Sophie's paper snowflakes. Duke slept at the foot of his bed every night, his steady breathing a lullaby more comforting than words. One evening, after dinner, Eli asked Ryan, "Do I call you Dad now?" Ryan paused, caught off guard by the directness. Then he smiled. "If that's what you want, yes." The boy grinned shyly. "Dad," he tried, the word tentative but full of warmth. Duke thumped his tail on the floor as though approving. By spring, the snow began to melt, and Maplewood Falls thawed under softer skies. The town had endured scandal, crime, and trial, but from it came something unexpected. New beginnings for children who had nearly been lost. Eli had a home, Kyle had a chance, Sophie had friends, and Ryan, once burdened by the ghosts of cases unsolved, now found himself building something he hadn't expected. A family. The thaw of spring settled gently over Maplewood Falls. Snowbanks shrank into trickles that threaded down the streets, and the pine trees shook free of their frosted coats. Ryan's cabin on the edge of town no longer looked like a lonely outpost against winter. It looked like a home. The smoke curling from the chimney spoke of warmth, of dinners shared, of stories told under soft lamplight. Inside, Eli Turner sat at the kitchen table, pencil in hand, working on homework. His hair had grown a little longer, his cheeks filled out from regular meals, and the boy who once cowered under his uncle's cruelty now looked steady, even hopeful. Duke dozed at his feet, occasionally lifting his head to rest it on Eli's lap, earning gentle scratches in return. Ryan stood nearby, preparing supper. He wasn't much of a cook, but spaghetti and garlic bread had quickly become a favorite. He wore a simple plaid shirt and jeans, his sheriff's badge resting on the counter. He'd learned to divide his life between duty and family, and tonight, family came first. A knock at the door drew Duke to his feet, tail wagging. When Ryan opened it, Claire Dawson stepped in, brushing stray strands of hair from her face, Maddie bouncing in behind her with a bright smile. Maddie carried a board game under one arm, announcing, "Game night." Eli's eyes lit up, and he hurried over. Maddie handed him the box, and the two children dashed to the living room to set it up. Claire laughed softly, slipping out of her coat. "I hope we're not intruding." Ryan shook his head. "You know you're always welcome here." Later that evening, the small cabin was filled with laughter. Maddie and Eli argued cheerfully over rules. Duke tried to insert himself by nudging game pieces with his nose, and Claire and Ryan exchanged quiet smiles at the warmth spreading through the room. The next day brought another gathering. Kyle Henderson arrived with Sophie, both carrying notebooks. Kyle wore a clean jacket one Ryan had helped him get through the community program, and Sophie clutched Maddie's hand almost immediately. The two girls whispering secrets only children knew. Kyle, still lanky and a little wary, lingered near Ryan. "I've been thinking," he said slowly. About what you said in court. About choices. Ryan placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You made one that day, Kyle. You told the truth. That took guts. Keep making choices like that, and you'll build a different life. Kyle looked down, then back up with determination. I don't got a dad. Never really had one, but if I did, I think he'd look a lot like you. Ryan's throat tightened, though he kept his voice steady. Then let me be that, Kyle. Not in name, maybe, but in the way it matters. The boy nodded, awkward but sincere. It was enough. Over the weeks, the cabin became less of a single household and more of a hub. Claire and Maddie visited often, sometimes bringing meals, sometimes staying late for games. Kyle came by for help with schoolwork or to learn small chores. Sophie loved Duke, often curling against him with a book, the shepherd patient as a saint. It was, in its way, a patchwork family. None of them shared blood, but they shared trust, effort, and a desire to heal what had once been broken. Maplewood Falls noticed too. Neighbors began to drop off baked bread or extra supplies, seeing Ryan not just as a deputy, but as a father figure who had chosen to open his home. One evening, after the children had gone to bed and Duke snored softly near the fire, Ryan sat with Claire on the porch. The stars scattered brightly above, free of the winter clouds. Claire folded her hands in her lap. You've built something rare, Ryan. A family not by chance, but by choice. Ryan looked back through the window at Eli asleep on the couch, Maddie's blanket draped over him. He built it too. I just gave him a place to start. The final touch came weeks later. Above the mantel in the cabin, framed carefully in dark wood, hung the crumpled $2 bill Eli had first pressed into Ryan's hand. The edges were worn, the ink faded, but it had become a symbol far greater than its worth. One afternoon, Eli stood gazing at it. His voice was soft but certain. I thought $2 could buy me a policeman, he said. Then he turned, his eyes steady on Ryan. But it bought me a family instead. Ryan rested a hand on the boy's shoulder, pride and affection mingling in his expression. Duke pressed against Eli's side, tail swishing slowly, as if agreeing. And so, in the quiet mountain town of Maplewood Falls, a circle of trust and love was forged, not of blood, but of choice. What began as desperation with a crumpled bill ended as a promise that no child would be left to face the cold alone again. Sometimes the smallest choices carry the greatest weight. For Eli, it was not the $2 themselves, but the courage to ask for help. And for Ryan, it was the decision to listen when so many others might have turned away. And through it all, Duke stood as more than a dog. He was the quiet guardian who sensed danger before anyone else, who brought hidden truth into the light, and who reminded everyone that loyalty is not taught, it is given freely. Duke's presence was not just protection, it was grace on 4 legs. In many ways, this story reminds us of the miracles God still places in our lives. Sometimes He sends people to protect us. Sometimes He sends opportunities to change. And sometimes He sends a faithful dog to remind us that love and family are still possible, even after loss. Maybe you too have faced cold seasons of life moments when the world felt harsh and unfair. Remember, you are never truly alone. God still works in the quiet, in the ordinary, in the unexpected guardians who stand by your side. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the story spoke to you. Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more stories of faith, courage, and second chances. And if you believe that God still sends miracles, even in the form of a loyal German Shepherd, write Amen in the comments. May the Lord bless you and keep you safe always.